you can start yourself by introducing yourself, a little bit about yourself.
Okay. My name is Victor, if you want to start with that. Okay, I'm Victor. I'm 32 this year. So I grew up in a Christian family. I worship in First Assembly, KL, which is in a street called Waisekai, Pudu. It's an old church. Yeah, I grew up there in a Cantonese service. So I grew up my whole life speaking Cantonese. Even when I first started answering my calling, I pastored there for quite some time. So I preach in Cantonese as well. Many people find it very funny. But I don't read Chinese at all. So that's how I started. Yeah.
How about like your family? Do you have any siblings or?
Oh yeah, I have two siblings. I have an elder brother, younger brother. They are both in church. My younger brother is now a board member. My elder brother is in Calvary Church. My family has a history of. I'm the fourth generation believers. My great grandparents, they were Christians, and then my grandparents were Christians. In fact, the first converts in my family are my grandparents and my granduncle. Both of them were the first converts when they were still Sunday school boy in the church. Then later on, they brought the whole family in. Yeah, so it's a big family tree. The Lee clan is quite big, but I'm the fourth generation. Yeah.
So you're married with one wife, definitely. Do you have any children?
I have two children now. My son is 2 years old, going to 3, and my daughter is by now is 3 months old.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
It's got a new baby. It's always exciting.
Maybe you could start off from when you encounter or recognize that call of God,
right.
And throughout that transition when you become a president.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when I was called by God, there was nothing about being a president.
Okay.
I got called at the age of 17, and it was in a camp where, those youth camp where you have all these revival services and so forth. And so that's where I got my calling after being prayed for twice in different occasions. Prophetic was being given to be one who prepares the soldiers for the end time harvest. That was my calling. So I never got to know what exactly it meant. So I just know that it's something got to do with full-time ministry. I jump in.
Were you in the full-time ministry
No,
right after? Or?
No. In fact, that was just after 17 years old. So after Form 5, then I told my parents. Now, even though my parents were Christians, but they give good wisdom. They say, maybe you should do your degree first before you go to do your theological studies. So I went and did my IT studies in a local private college, Apit College. Now it's called APU. When I was there, I asked God, you got to give me a confirmation. If this is your will for me to go full-time, I need a scholarship to study this program. I do not want my parents to pay for it, so that I don't want them to say, I have paid for it, later you need to work it back before you go into full-time. And lo and behold, I got the scholarship. I see it as a confirmation. After I finished my diploma there, then God gave a sense of urgency. So I have to move back and really think through. And from my diploma, I jumped to BCM. That's where I start my full-time study in Bible College to do a BTH there. Oftentimes, a lot of people ask me, how exactly is the transition happens? Let me just summarize this. When I joined Bible school, that was 5-6 years ago, I joined as a lecturer. Okay, they sent me for training, they expect me to be a lecturer. So I was not in their mind, I think, to be a president. Of course, I don't know what is in Koki's mind then. So 3 years back, by now it should be 4 years back, Koki then called me up and says, would you like to consider to be the president? Said, okay.
Like just suddenly? Or?
Yeah, just suddenly.
Wow.
And I was like, okay. And Koki said, hey, you don't have to reply me now. Go back, talk to your wife, think about it, pray about it. So I went back and then I talked to my wife, pray about it. My wife asked me, "Are you serious or not? This is not simple matter."
How long does it take you to actually get
Yeah,
back to him?
yeah. So it took me about a week time,
Oh, a week.
just a week.
Okay.
In fact, I just find that there's a peace in my mind. The way I respond to God's call is almost a similar pattern. If I find God is giving me a peace in my mind, like a serenity, and this is what God is telling me, then I just do it. The same thing happened when I was in Bible school at that time. I was elected as the student council president. And before I got elected, I asked God, if you really want me to be president, you give me a peace of mind and help me with it, because I don't see myself leading, you know. So at that time, I just got elected. And so this time as well, I say, okay, fine. So I responded to Koki and say, yeah, okay, I can take up the challenge. And so Koki straight in my face and said, okay, you're not the first person we are considering. Very honest, which I like it. Very honest. He said, you're not the first person we're considering. There's another person that we consider, and we asked the person already. And so happened the person declined, and so they are now giving you a second shot. You are the second options. And so the thing is this. He said, we're going to work out a 3-year plan. 3 years plan. In this 3 year, we will train you up, work out things with you. But the thing is this, if you don't make it, even after 3 years, you may not get it. So
It's
there's
like a
no
3-year probation.
correct. There's no guarantee, which I understand. So it's okay. Totally understand. In fact, if you find that I'm not fit, better I don't take up the role. That's in my mind. I don't want to be a stumbling block to someone's growth. So that begins the journey. The first year, basically, I just have to sit in all the meetings.
Okay.
All the committees in the school I have to sit in. So just to get around to know all the ministry in the school. So it was very busy. I'm in all their meetings, all their programs, all their activities. And then second year onwards, I was given the position as a vice president. As a vice president, then I have to start working out with meetings, international meetings. So I start traveling a lot on top of what I've been doing. It was crazy. I almost spent every day meeting. So I get so fed up with meetings. But then you have to learn, you see. And then finally, on the third year, Koki said, okay, this is the final year. You do all the decisions making. So he will sit in the meetings, but I'll just keep quiet.
Sure.
That's Koki. He can just keep quiet throughout the meeting. He can do it. I don't know how anyone else can do that. You just keep quiet. Anything you ask decision, ask Victor. So basically, I make all the decisions for that 1 year.
Wow.
But nobody knows, because from the front, everyone thought it's Koki is making the decision. But all these meetings are indoors meetings, so I make the decision and then they will just carry out.
Right.
So I try to bargain with Koki. Say, can you just extend another year? Because my PhD is not done, a lot of things not done. And there's Koki. He says, don't worry, if you really can't do it, then we extend. But if I think you can do it, then there's no necessary to do so. So last year, they have a bit of a havoc because Koki has some issue with the executive committee, and they're discussing whether am I ready to take up the role or not. So they were considering to, like, should we extend another year or should we find someone else? But Koki was so adamant and says no. He thinks that he is ready, and he will put his line on it.
Wow.
It's almost like if you don't give him this, I'm just going to walk off.
Wow.
So that's how much Koki trusted me. And I just, okay, I just take it, you know. So after that, at the year end, then I went through a series of interviews with the school board and then with the executive committee. So there were a few rounds of interviews, and then at the end, I think they have all come to a conclusion. They agreed. So after that meeting, all the interviews done, then it's confirmed. Then only it's announced that I will take up the president's role. Yeah. Before that, I think internally the board members, they know it, but it was never announced. So that was how I was prepared. So then, but a lot of people suspect you become vice president. Why you never have vice president before? So they suspected but you just keep quiet. It's okay. So book it out. So that's how the process was done. So it was a 3-year program, 3-year planning, and then end of last year, then everything is sorted out, the transition ends there, so I took over everything from there.
It was quite a smooth one. It's not.
Yeah.
There were no like complications or whatsoever, right?
Nope. No.
That's great.
I think it's because Koki was so daring in a sense
Yeah.
to just let me take it almost like there was the final year is almost like Koki is there but it's not there. While I run the whole show, but at the same time if really I need help, Koki is still there. So that is like the final line to it. So once that is over, then I can take over from there. And even now, Koki still offers, advice and things, and always say if you need any help, you can always come to my house or can go coffee. So that has been very helpful for me. Yeah.
How does it go for you right now? I mean, your life then and your life right now as a president, were there any drastic differences in terms like of your personal life or even in your ministry, in your church?
Right.
Your relationship with your friends, your family, your members?
Oh, it has tremendously changed my life. Before I was a president, I was a pastor, and I also lecture in Bible College. So weekend, most of the time I spend my time with my family. I worship still in First Assembly. I help out them if they ever need me. But then after I become a president, my weekend is mostly in other churches. I'm preaching everywhere in Malaysia. I think this year I spent less than 6-7 times back in my home church. So most of the time I travel around the different states and to connect to people. And then I also find that people start to look at me differently. They will call me president here, president. I always say, don't, I'm just Victor, call me Victor. But somehow the kind of status is given, which I find really uncomfortable at first. But soon I'm trying to learn to adapt to it. But the other thing is that the words that I speak, you see, I am a person who is so-called innovator. I like to change things. I like to suggest things.
Right.
So when I was a pastor, young pastor, it's okay. People expect that. You come out with different ideas and things like that.
Sure.
But now that I'm a president, if I say something, the implication is that, are you serious about it? Is it going to be done or what? Because sometimes I'm just brainstorming. I'm used to brainstorming. So I have to be very careful with my words. Otherwise, people will take it like, oh, you really mean that? Actually, I didn't mean that. I just trying to brainstorm.
There's this whole status that you have to live up to.
Right. And whether you live up to it or not, that's another question.
Yeah.
I think at least from the people's expectation, they do expect you to have certain authority in your words. So I have to be very careful with what I speak, and the impression that people will see is very important as well. Since I'm so-called the image of the school, so I have to be very careful with how we speak to people. But generally, perhaps I think God has been preparing my life so far. I don't have to change that much.
That's great.
I really don't have to change that much. When I was young, a lot of people say you're old man. Old man. So why look at me? Maybe I look old. But in my family, there is a pastor, but he's my grand uncle, Martin Lee. He passed away a few years back. But he was like a figure in our family that pastors are supposed to be like that. So I grew up having this impression I have to be someone mature spiritually. And somehow, I don't know, the kind of image just built into my life. And throughout my life, people have been saying, you are just an old man, you're mature. People say you are older than your brother, my elder brother. But then somehow, when I took over the role, I just keep on this character. I didn't change much, actually. Yeah, so I think God has been doing something in my life throughout the formation years. Yeah. And when I ended up this post, it just flow along.
Were there any specific mentors would you like to?
Okay. Well, I don't have a formalized mentor relationships. In my life, there are a lot of people very instrumentals. They speak to my life. Like I mentioned, my youth pastor, my youth leader, my pastor, Stephen Ong. And then when I came to Bible school, we have very good lecturers and they really speak to my life, like Wendy, Pastor Florence, and even in the Chinese department, Dr. Chen, and of course the late Pastor Yu Chen, and of course the previous president Koki as well. But Koki doesn't speak much. When he speaks, you know something very important, but he doesn't speak much. So I think the lecturers speak a lot into my life.
Right.
They help me to do adjustment. So there will be times in Bible school we don't just study in classroom, we go out for tea,
Correct.
for coffee, and those are very important time as well, because in those informal time we get to peek into their brain, what's going through in their lives. And you'll be surprised, some of them will be very honest with you with their struggles. And you can see being a pastor is just being a human. It's nothing so-called super being.
Natural or
Yeah,
something,
it's just being a normal human, trying your best to fulfill God's call in your life. And everyone have their own walks.
Yeah.
And so I think they speak into my life in a very genuine way. So I learn a lot from them. But apart from that, I don't have a really formalized mentor. I don't have that. Yeah.
Would you recommend that because students like us,
Right.
we have networks,
Right.
but would you recommend like a mentor?
Yeah, it would be good
relationship?
to have mentors. I would certainly encourage you to have mentors. Like I said, I don't have a formal mentor, but I do have people to speak almost like a mentor to my life. When I was still in so-called the person next to be the president, Yu Chen speak a lot into my life. We spend a lot of hours together. We go for tea, we go for nearby Doi Chang, and he's a very generous person. He spent on me, and I enjoy the generosity. I just take whatever is given. But we spend a lot of time talking about life, not just about ministry, about life. He has concern about what are you doing at home? What is your family doing? How's your wife doing?
You need to. It's better to open up to.
Right. And if you want to make it like a technical thing, I think maybe Yu Chen is like a mentor to me. And then of course Yu Chen and then Koki as well. These two fellas, we always go tea together. And sometimes Koki will tell me all his frustrations. I don't know how I do. How come they don't know about this? And so I got roped in that sense to all this discussion, all these things that are happening, not just in our school, but also in whole Malaysia, especially with all the pastors. I guess they are trying to prepare me to see what is ahead of me with all these issues that are happening in Malaysia. So in that sense, having people like that in your life, speak into your life, and share honestly, genuinely, is really, really helpful. Really, really helpful. Yeah. This may not be directly related, but the way I look at my life, the key formation season in my life is really when I was young, really young, like youth and things like that. But I find that at that moment, the church, the leadership of the church plays an essential role in my life. Though I don't have a real mentor, formalized mentor, so to speak, but the connection that I have with the leaders in my church, I think that really, really make it through, help me to make it through. I have elders in the church that is really knowledgeable in the Word of God. I have pastors who are really caring, and I have leaders, youth leaders who are not full-time, lay people, but doing almost like a full-time load in the church. So they give really strong examples to my life, and I grew up connecting with these people. So when I'm going through all these struggles as a young chap, doubts in my life, how do I relate to the wider society? I think the interaction with the local leaders in the church is really essential. So I think, to me personally, mentoring for young people is important, but more importantly is the connection with a local church. A local church leaders that trust and believe in young people, and they will really invest. I tell you, my church, they invest a lot. They send us to conference, they do a lot of things, they bring people in, and they invest a lot in us. And I really appreciate that. And of course, our church is a very unique church. 80 years of history, we have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And they are very honest with it. So as I grew up, I learned all these things. And that helps me to balance my life. as well as my view of things. And that helped me to become more mature. When things happen, I don't get shaken. See? And I have to learn how to go tenacity, go strong, persevere in whatever I do. The kind of thing that you have to go through the process. Having someone to tell you, you need to go through it, it won't be enough. You need someone to journey with you. And I'm grateful that my home church is really doing that when I was very young.
Let's transition to this, the theme for BCM.
Sure.
Passing the baton. Maybe could you share a little bit of what does it mean to you?
Right.
How should it mean to the students of this college and probably to the community around this college as well?
Right.
What do you think?
Okay. Interestingly, this theme came about, in actually my sermon. Levi, the editor, was listening to the sermon and he got this idea about passing the baton in connection with how Paul encouraged Timothy, and you need to continue to preach and teach because when I'm no longer here, you will continue the work. I absolutely agree with what Paul says because no minister will live forever.
Yes.
And somewhere down the road, you have to pass down the baton. And for Malaysia particularly, in the past, AOG, Assembly of God, is a small movement. So the earlier days focus on pioneering. They go around pioneering churches. And the church bloomed, a lot of local churches started. And now there are a lot of little communities here everywhere in Malaysia. By this stage, we are moving into a new era where the senior pastors, many of the leaders of these local churches are now in their 50s, 60s, getting ready to pass on to the next generation. So I think particularly for this era of stage, we need to really look on how to do the transition, how we can pass down to a younger generation that will take the baton and not just to maintain a ministry, but to give the ministry a fresh vision to move forward, and so that, as a senior person, we'll be glad and rejoice with the success of our younger ones. So that's really why, I really support of this whole team that we need to pass the baton to the next generation.
Any advice or anything that you would like to encourage for the BCM students who are graduating, even the young and the old? Right.
When I graduated from Bible school, I have a very good friend from Hong Kong, Pastor Timothy. He speaks into my life as well. We have a long friendship. He's a very veteran pastor, evangelist. So when he came to our church, we have that friendship. And so he advised things which I, until today, still hang on to it. Say as a young minister, you have to learn to be like a sponge. You just absorb anything that comes to your life, okay? And you have to learn to be humble. Humble in the sense that you don't complain. When people ask you to do things, just do it. Just do it. Even though you say, oh, I'm a pastor now, I shouldn't be doing this. Well, that is your test of humility.
Yes.
If you're called to be a servant, you have to be servant of all. So just do everything possible within your means. In terms of pastoral duties, tasks that is given to you, be humble enough to take up all the roles. Because one day you will find all these things will come back at you and will form your characters. It makes you as a person, a pastor that is people-friendly, that people can approach.
You would like to share, probably an update or something like that?
Well, personally, the first thing first, I had to finish my doctorate. I'm still in my last tail end of my doctorate studies. Once that is done, that will be like a heavy burden lift up of me. Then the next thing will be keep working on the training program in Bible school. So oftentimes I and my team, we always discuss what is the best way to train our ministers? What is a better way? Is there a way we can improve? So in BCM, we always have these short meetings, talk about what else can we do better. So throughout the years, you can see a lot of things keep changing here and there. And that's one of the reasons why. I think personally for me, there is something I like to do. I'm an innovator. I like to improve things. I'm not a creative person. I don't make things. I just improve where they are. And that's personally for me. Then the next part will be preparing my children. They're very young, so a lot of time I will spend in parenting, and as well as ministry-wise, I stay quite close in terms of technology like networks and WhatsApp with my own local church. If any possible, I'll still go back to my home church to worship with my fellow friends. So the friendship is there. So I spend time nurturing their friendships. Yeah. So I think basically president's role, I don't see myself going to be like president forever.
Okay.
So what I'm doing even now is just to prepare a foundation for the next president. So I have to start working on that. Whatever structure that I'm implementing, all the things, the building project that we are planning on, the things that we are purchasing, anything that we do, back in my mind, I'm thinking, would it help the next president? That's it.
Small conclusion, like,
Sure.
right now, I'm sure that in the midst of being a president and in the midst of being a busy man, of course, there is always an effort and time to invest in your, in your daily life, your walk with God.
Right.
So, in your daily walk with God, do you hope to see anything what God could actually empower you, or any areas that God can empower you or minister to you in a certain way? Do you hope to see any of that, like anything specific?
Well, my personal life, my daily walk with God is almost like a steady walk. I'm not like some people. We have a lot of vision and dream. I don't get all these things. My calling is also not that dramatic as well.
Yeah.
But anyway, I trust that as we walk closely with God, God begins to reveal things. I'm more like the person in Esther, like Esther. You don't see God obviously,
Sure.
but God is always in the background. So in my walk with God, somehow God will place people into my life, events that will happen, and there will be different testings. So what I hope I will continue to do is that I will not lose sight of God despite my busyness. And so even in my journey now as a president, I start to see a lot of strain happen in my emotion, the physical body, the stress that comes in. But nevertheless, God has been very good. As I just pray and I just call to God, God is always there. God is always hearing, listening, and encouraging. And so it's like a steady walk. Take one step a day, one thing at a time. And sometimes God will bring people around me and remind me of things. So nothing bizarre, but just slowly, steady walk with God and let God do it. God is the one who is leading. Just trust God with it.